Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, Rover Turbo. In this video, part 7 of the Range Rover 4.4 V8, which is sort of a part 2, it isn't sort of a part 2 to the last part. So there was just too much content in there to add together into one video, so basically I've split it up. I've also done the same for part 8. At the end of part 8, hopefully it will have gone through an MOT and I'll know whether it would pass or whether it had failed. So let's get on with the video. As usual, please subscribe, like the video, comment down below, all that fun stuff, and yeah, let's get on. So it's the next day, Sunday. I'm repping it in the courtesy car. Awesome beast this is. So going back down there, do the front brakes and get back. Three cylinders of pure power. So I'm back here on the Range Rover. Got a box of front pads. So obviously one side. That's the other. So I've just got to jack up the front, take both front wheels off. All right. These wheels are heavy. Now normally I would turn the wheel obviously round so this was pointing more out here, but I can't be bothered. So I've got to get in there, put the key ignition, turn the ignition on. Battery's probably flat so you can get a better access to it. But so you got your wear sensor. It hasn't hit the wear sensor yet. That should be okay. I'll have to get that out. And then you've got your two caps at the back here, one at the top, one at the bottom. And then normally it's a 7mm. So yeah, and then that one I'm just going to need an extension on there because the brake hose is in the way. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to carefully get a lever bar in there while minding that sensor, and then try and push this piston back in as much as it will go. So I've just got a lever bar in there, literally just in on the side of the disc there. It's not going to do any damage as long as you're not wrenching it and pulling it. It's not going to do any damage. And literally, and what this also does as well, it obviously makes it easier to push the piston in, but what it also does is it makes sure that this piston isn't C-solid. Because I've had these before on these old Range Rovers, old cars, where the piston it's busted inside the bore. You take the caliper off, you take it all apart, you try and push the piston back in, and then it seizes up. I've had it where I've been stranded because the caliper is completely seized and I've had to replace it. So this way, at least, before you take anything apart, you know that piston isn't seized. So I can now take this apart. Bing. So I've just got a little extension in there. All we do is just clean up these mating surfaces with a wire brush or whatever you want to get. Obviously, these bolts come out. Still got a decent amount of grease on there. I probably could have got away with not replacing these. I mean, they're not too bad, but you know, peace of mind now, whoever buys this car. So all new pads, front and rear. I'm going to get on and do this. I'm not going to video all of this. So I'm going to clean this all up. I've done it a bit on the rear. Take the pads out, clean this all up, push the piston right back in, clean these pins up, grease it up and put it all back together. Okay, so that's it. The pads are in, all cleaned up, pins are in, all tightened back up, caps are back in, the wear sensor's back in, clipped into there, clipped into there. So that's that side done. So I just need to do the other side and then this is done. So at this point, this car is now ready for an MOT. So I will actually book this in for an MOT next week. I can't see any reason. No, actually, I can't book it in next week because I need to do those rear brake hoses. So after they're done, it can go in for an MOT. Okay, so that's all, both fronts done. Wheels back on. Now I'm just going to go around and torque up all of the wheel bolts to 150 Newton meters. I can't remember what it is in the book. It's around 150, 160, 140, something like that on these big beasts. So normally when I do these up, I do this on number 2, or just be careful on number 3, not to do them up too tight. Otherwise the next person will curse you when they want to undo the wheel bolts at the side of the road. So as you can see, they're not too tight. That's what you want. You want the socket. If you put the torque wrench on the bolt, right? A lot of garages do this, right? They get the air gun, they go brr, 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 right? They get the torque wrench and they go click, 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 click. Yeah, that's torqued up. Yeah. Click, 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 yeah, that's no, it's not, it's too tight. If it's clicking and not moving, it's too tight. They do it and you think that they're all torqued up and they're doing a good job, which the majority of them probably are. But I've seen them, I've watched tyres being done by myself years ago, where they have, you can see them click, click, click. As soon as they put it on, it clicks. It doesn't turn. If it does that, the bolt's too tight. It could be 200 Newton meters for all you know. How are you going to undo that at the side of the road? Anyway, one of my pet hates is wheel bolts that are too tight, because invariably, if a car hasn't been touched, or it's been at a garage, or it's had a tyre done, again, I'm not blaming tyre fitters in general, you can't get the bloody wheel bolts off. And of course, these locking wheel nuts, I've had these shear off because they're just too tight, even with a bar. So anyway, I'm gonna get all these torqued up, and I've got a big mess I need to clear up, tools to put back, dust and crap and stuff I've got to clear up everywhere. And then I am done. I just need to get inside, pump up the brakes, and then check the brake level in the reservoir and put the cap back on. Back on the Range Rover again. I'm going to have a look at replacing these hard lines that go up, because these are a bit crusty and they come round to here. So I bought 2 replacement hoses. So what I'm going to do, because I wasn't planning on doing this, I'm going to try and see whether the bleed nipple comes undone. I can crack that loose, and I can crack that loose, because if that doesn't come loose, that snaps off. That doesn't come loose, then I'm not even going to try. But it looks like it should be relatively easy. Its route that it goes, it just comes down here and goes onto the brake caliper. So let me get some spanners. 11mm, that came undone, that's fine. I haven't tried that one, you'll see why in a sec. This one I can't get undone. It's an 11mm, 11mm's really loose. It tries to round the bolt off. Obviously I'm not going to round it off. So I got a flared nut spanner. That's really loose on there. Look, see, that's just play. So that tries to round that off. I've got a 10, which I can't get on because it's too small. I managed to hammer on a 10mm carefully, and it just went to round it off. So that's not going to come undone. So what I need to do is obviously butcher this off. It's going to screw up the nut, which means I'm probably going to have to cut this pipe, put a new end on it and re-flare it to put it into the new fitting, which I cannot do right now. So I'm possibly going to see whether the other side is going to come undone. It's a bit annoying because this brake pipe here, it's been replaced at some point. That's not an original brake pipe. So I was hoping that because it's been done, you know, relatively recently, that it would come undone, but I think that's just been done up super, super tight. So, yeah. So this side's done exactly the same. I did try and get a pair of mole grips on this just to try my luck, take a bit of a risk, but no, it's not undoing. I can't risk doing it here because it's not my ramp, and if that snaps off, and I haven't got time today to be, you know, and this one, the brake pipe hasn't got as much slack on it, so it's going to turn into a complete nightmare. So if I do it at home, at least you know, if something snaps or breaks, I can, you know, it's not stuck in the way. So yeah, so I will continue on with this when I'm at home. I'm working a bit more on the Range Rover's brake pipes, replacing these. Probably a week later, had a minute just to have a look at, see if I could get this nut undone. Now I managed to get this turning with using a 10mm spanner, and I hammered it on and I whacked it and it came loose, but it was still twisting the end of the pipe, so there was no two ways about it. I was hoping that if I could get it undone I could just swap the pipe over, but that ain't gonna happen. So I've got the dead arm on the brake pedal again, so it's pushing it down. So now there's a couple of drips and now it's not dripping. So I'm just going to unscrew the union that's inside there, and then the plan is obviously to replace the pipe and then re-put a new flare on the end of here, because there's quite a bit of flexibility in this pipe. The other side not so much, so I'm not quite sure. I might put a joiner in it, I'm not sure. I haven't got one, but I'm thinking about possibly getting one. So I'm going to get this nut off, which is awkward in itself because it's not 10mm anymore and it's not 11mm anymore. So hoping it's going to undo. Okay, it's coming now. So that's that off, and then hopefully this should just pull out. I've already tried undoing the caliper bolt and that does undo wherever it is. Can't see it. I've got grease all over my hands now, so I don't want to touch my camera. I'll get this pipe out and get a new fitting for that. I bought another tool, the DIN 7.5, after a comment that I read, and he's bang on, but they do work on copper. Doesn't matter what you use really, it will crush to the correct size, but I bought the right one, so I'll show me doing that. Now at some point in this Range Rover saga, I'm sure I said this brake pipe is relatively easy. But I mean, there's an Allen key bolt there holding this on. I don't think that's going to come out, and that in there as well. You can't really see it, but there's nothing left in there. It doesn't resemble anything, a bolt, or I don't even know what that is. So this is going to come undone or snap off, and this one is probably gonna just be chiseled off, probably. So let's see whether this comes undone or snaps off. Oh my god, is that a miracle or what? Still think they need replacing? But I mean, what is that? I just hit that with a hammer. A chisel. I mean, there's no way. I mean, I might be able to get a pair of mole grips on there and maybe try and do something with this, but or not. I think it's definitely a bit thinner. Okay, so there's no way I'm going to get that out of there, so nothing I can do about it. I just have to put a big zip tie around it. At least we've still got this one here. So these are the pipes. Came as a pair off of eBay. It all makes 4x4. Two part numbers are identical, and it's just starting to rain out of nowhere. It's just started to rain. Luckily, it does come with a new nut and 2 new washers. We're looking a bit worse for wear, so I'm happy about that. I'm going to get this fed in, and then look at getting that brake pipe squared off, and then put a new flare on the end of that with a new fitting. I've cut the pipe off, straightened it up a bit, filed the end of the flat, reamed it out inside. I've got this new kit, which is a DIN 4.75, which apparently is the actual proper fitting you need. So you can just see the pipe sticking through there. Screw that in there, and I'm going to make sure that this pipe is pushed up against here. Just going to pull it in and out so I know it's touching, and then I'm going to tighten these 2 bolts up. Right, so that was pushed all the way in. I just did it so I could hear it tap, tap, tap. Tightened up the 2 bolts, tightened them up, sort of hand tight, with the spanner. Loosen this off. So I'm just going to put a little bit of double grease on there and screw it in. Right, I also put a little bit on the threads as well, just to help. And there you go, that's the stop there. So unscrew it. So that is the correct DIN flare. So I'm not quite sure this is going to work actually, because I've cut a lot more off of this than I was hoping to. So this has got to come round the back and the elbow round into here. So this was just a trial run really, just to see. But worst case scenario, I could probably put a joiner on here and bend this a bit more around in there, so I can get a joiner in here and then bring it around and just put a small piece in. Seeing how this has worked, I'm definitely going to have to do that over the other side. The pipe run is slightly different, and there's no way I'm going to be able to put another flare. Well, I'll be able to get a flare on it, but it definitely won't reach. Right, so that's pretty much done. This flare went really well, that went in fine. I've had to put 2 zip ties on this bracket to hold that in, and that's secure. And obviously this one here, this one here, that went back in fine. There's a zip tie holding this on already, and that's all up. This is all tight, so this normally slips onto the nipple, but I've got to bleed that, so that will be done afterwards. So these pipes here, these are actually copper. Now, when I bought this, I didn't know what I was buying. It doesn't really say what it is, but I believe this to be copper coated steel. So I think this is quite stiff. So I think I've made life difficult for myself buying this. It was cheap, but I think the trouble is I don't know whether you can tell the difference between copper and the coated copper, or the part it's got a percentage. Apparently pure copper is not particularly great. Over time it ages and it becomes brittle, which means that it could potentially snap. So it's very unusual for people to use actual copper brake lines. They're not copper brake lines, they're copper nickel, I think. I think there's a percentage of nickel in them, which makes them a little bit more stiffer, but not stiff as steel, but a little bit more stiffer than copper. Apparently that's, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but apparently that's the stuff to go for. It's not cheap, I don't think, but I think this was sort of like 30 quid, and we've got a few fittings in it and stuff, and I think the copper nickel is like 60 quid. So that's it. So I've just got to bleed the brakes. So I'm going to bleed the brakes on this side, put the wheel back on, go around to the other side and do the other side. But first of all, I've got to pick up a joiner so I can do the other side. I just thought I'd see take the grate in there, does it? So yeah, it's don't think it would have burst, but so I'm definitely glad I didn't. So I thought I'd treat myself to one of these Sealy pressure bleeders. I've used this all the time, just not at home. So I know how they work and they are handy bits of kit. But so I thought it's just going to make things a hell of a lot easier. So I've already filled it up with brake fluid in through there, and then you get the cap. So quite easy to do. You just unscrew and then you get the cap. If it's got a strainer in there that hits, you have to take the strainer out. And the idea is obviously you connect the pressure bleeder using this connector onto there, and then you pump it up to, I don't know, around 1 bar or whatever, and that pressurises the system. Obviously you have to take the arm off of the foot brake, and then yeah, you just open up the bleed nipple into a container and it will pressure bleed the system basically. So it's a much quicker, efficient way of doing it. You kind of feel it when you pump it, it starts to get quite hard, but it says do not exceed 28 psi, but you wouldn't want to get anywhere near that. So somewhere in the middle there, you just have to keep checking it and pumping it up and just check it's not leaking. Sometimes if the seal isn't done right, it can be leaking out through the, so obviously this is pumping brake fluid in under pressure into there. So remove that and then just so just keep doing that, and basically till all the air bubbles stop coming out. You see a collection of bubbles there, look. So I'll just do that until I get a nice firm pedal and all the bubbles stop, and then obviously I'll check for leaks. Good thing to do sometimes as well, if you've ever done brake pipes, is if you've got one of those one-man arms, you can push the brake pedal and keep it on for 10-15 minutes, something like that. Get the system under pressure, and obviously that will then check to make sure your fittings are all tight and leak free. Right, so there you go. So that was the end of that part on this Range Rover. It's been a bit of a long, traumatic journey on this one, but what can you do? There's still more to come. There's a lot more I've recorded that I've got compiled together. I'll put out in a few days' time. Hopefully by that point we'll have the MOT or not. We'll find out. So at this point it will be tomorrow, so that will be in the next part. So yeah, as usual, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've learned something by watching my videos. I might drivel and be a bit boring with all my crap I'm coming out with, but I'm hoping that some of the bits that I put in there, people will find interesting and learning from. So it depends whether you're watching this for entertainment or whether you're watching it to learn something. So whatever, it is what it is, as they say. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Cheers. So hopefully at the end of part 8, I'll have it will have gone to, and I'm gonna sneeze. At the end of part 8,